Hello. You're welcome. We've come here today to celebrate a wonderful life, a warrior, Pete Landon, who has obviously touched us all deeply, that we have been so moved to come and celebrate him this day. One of the lines he left me with, he helped us a lot when we were building up on the hill, building out the buildings up there, and gosh, I remember he was probably living a healthier lifestyle at that time, because I would feed him such garbage, and Don would get so upset with me. He'd say, "Don't feed him Taco Bell. He doesn't eat like that." But one of the lines he left me with, and whenever we were going to go somewhere, he said, "Let's roll. Time to roll." And it's like whenever I'm going anywhere now, I speak to my son and my wife. Time to roll out here. And I think of Pete every time I do that. I remember one time he picked me up at the airport and he called Don and said, "Got Christian rolling out now." So I can just see Pete rolling out. He is definitely taking off. So none of us want to be here today under these circumstances. I mean, Pete, a vibrant expression, outspoken, opinionated individual who wasn't afraid to share his position on life. But also with that, we had many conversations in class and in our times together about what goes on after here. And so here's a wonderful poem that says, "Do not stand at my grave and weep, for I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow, I am the diamond glint on the snow. I am the gentle rain of sunlight upon ripened grain. I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. I am not there. I did not die." One of the most consistent things about life is that it is constantly changing. It is consistently releasing one form, and it is assuming a new one. It's true in nature. It's also true in the human form. In the physical body, it's a wonderful vehicle that we get to roll into this life with. And it's a beautiful instrument that has been granted to us as we are operating in this plane of existence. But when it's done, it's time to let go and take on the new adventure in life. Ernest Holmes, he's the founder of this philosophy. He said that the eagle, when freed from its cage, soars to its native height. So the soul within us all, when freed from the flesh, returns to its native height. Well, with Pete, I could just see him hopping on one of those helicopters and taking off, as he did so many times in his days in Vietnam. And so we're gathered here to lovingly join in honoring and a celebration of Pete's life. And may I respectfully suggest that we do honor Pete and honor the memories of this wonderful man, of those times that we shared with him, of those happier times, of those moments in which he touched our lives, and know that he does continue on with the wonderful currents of eternality and immortality. And this is a special time that we have come together. And so instead of grief, Don was sharing with me, this is a celebration of Pete, who touched our lives and became part of our lives when he touched us. And I can remember, working with a friend up in the Camarillo area, Dr. Fletcher Harding, and the doctors had given him a short time to live, and he walked out to where he lived, just outside the city in Ventura, and looked out across the mountains that he lived and he loved so much. He looked at where the river would flow and rejoice. He looked at the trees that grew, mostly the avocado trees they were. And he just said, this area is truly is God's poetry in motion. And he would look up at the stars at night. He would tell me those shining stars, and he would say, "I may not see you much longer, mountain, but I shall be alive when you have fallen." And to the river, he would say that, "You know what? I may not be alive when you cease running, but I will be alive when you cease running." And to the stars and the great downpulling of the universe, he said, "I shall be alive when you cease shining." That is a wonderful expression of the immortality of life, of the continuity of life, that I shall be when the mountain is gone, when the river ceases running, even when the stars keep shining. That spirit, that is Pete, that that twinkles like the stars will continue to always be. And so one of the challenging times at a service like this is not so much the death of the body, but rather of the dreams that weren't fulfilled, of the words you wish you would have shared that you never quite got around to saying, the things you were going to do and never quite did. Well, we are assembled here not to bid farewell, but to bid Pete Godspeed in his new experience in life, because he lives, and he shall live. For that which put the twinkle in his eyes is that spirit that continues on beyond this realm. For this has been merely a stopping point in the continuity and the evolution of life. He came in here and is learned, he has grown, he has shared, and he has continued on. And the love that brought him together with Dawn, with Sarah, with us, that love transcends time and space. It is multidimensional. It is that which has brought us together here and will continue to bring the tribe together with Pete hereafter. And so one of the beautiful words of comfort that we find can be found from Jesus in the 14th chapter of John. And I share just pieces of it where Jesus left us this beautiful understanding of life. He said, "Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe in me also. For in my Father's house are many rooms. And if it were not so, I would not tell you. But I will go and I will prepare a place for you. So do you not believe that I am with God and that my Father is with me, and that the words I speak, that I do speak not of myself, but as Spirit speaks through me? For I will ask my Father, and he will give you another comforter to be with you always. For in my Father's house are many rooms. So peace I leave you. My own peace I give you. Not as the world gives, but as I give. So let not your heart be troubled, and be not afraid, because I live, and ye shall live also." We shall continue to live. Maybe we can get someone to close that door. Thank you. Yeah, there's just a meeting wrapping up, so. I've also found great words of comfort this time from the 23rd Psalm that said, "The Lord, that is the eternal presence. That is life itself. That is the life and love. The Lord, this is my shepherd, and I shall not want." That means I shall not lack for the strength or the comfort or the courage. "And he maketh me to lie down in green pastures." That's where we're provided for. That is where the turbulence and unrest no longer exists. For he leads me besides the still waters. He restoreth my soul. That is the confidence and trust in the Spirit, in that life that continues on. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That is so we can show the Spirit of the God that we are, the likeness and the nature of Spirit. "And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, and thy rod and thy staff," that is the power. That is the protection. This is what comforts me. "Thou shalt anointest my head with oil," because that is, I'm thy own, I'm the Spirit's, I'm the expression of life. "And my cup runneth over," that's because I am filled with the truth, the love, the immortality. "And surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord." That is the house of the eternal, omnipresent. So, there's a poet that said, think of stepping on a shore and finding that it's heaven. Of taking hold of a hand and finding that it's God's hand. Of breathing new air and experiencing that is celestial air. Of feeling invigorated and finding that this is what immortality is all about. Of passing through the storm and seeing and experiencing the calm. Of walking and finding yourself home. Pete has found himself home. He has found the calm, the clarity. See, one of our beliefs, and this is some of what I know we've shared with Pete, we spent many days, weeks, months trying to get those places in shape up on the hill. So we had some close time talking and bonding. Don called me just before Pete ascended, and we had a chance to speak briefly and to pray together. And his belief was that he was not going to obtain immortality, but rather one is immortal now. And our contention is not that a dead person lives again, but rather a living person can never die. See, the immortality is the continuity. It is the ongoingness of life. And it's like, you remember those Super 8 movie frames? You got a little frame and it goes into the next one. Well, Pete was doing life when he came into this frame, and he is doing life in the next frame. Growing, evolving, rolling on to what is next. And so people often ask, do you think I will see him again? It's always one of those straightforward searching questions, and I will say yes, absolutely, I believe so. It may not be in the form that we have known Pete here, but you know what? We will know that which put the twinkle in the eyes. We will know that spirit that is Pete, that courageous, expressive, dynamic individual. Yes, we will know that, and it is times like this that are as natural as birth. Nature takes care of us coming into this life, and it's going to take care of us leaving out of this life. It will orient us and get us going and situated in the ways that are necessary. And it's times like this that are gifts to us, because it stretches the very fabric of our faith, that it has us exploring and taking a look at our own mortality, and recognize that at the very end is not the time to prepare and to explore consciousness as what is this ascension or transition all about. Now is the time to take a look, and Pete has given us this wonderful opportunity and say, can I? Pete was very logical, and as Wernher von Braun, the space physicist, he was an atheist the most part of his life. But what he eventually came to is that nature has made no provision for termination, only transformation. And so the energy and the life that we have known as Pete has transformed into that which is next. And so to lose such a dear friend after so many years of loving and caring and sharing and memories, it's painful. I get it. He's a brother. It's difficult to part with such a positive force, a husband, a dad that has been part of our life. But anything that is physical is not forever. But in reality, he will be part of our very lives. He will be immortal through us. We'll continue to love in our hearts and our minds. Pete will participate in our actions. Things will go through the filters of part of what Pete has given us. And because of that, we have so much more to bring to our life. Pete was brave, he was courageous, he was dynamic, but he also had a heart of gold. I can remember Pete's a man's man. I mean, he was tough. But he had a heart that was just huge. He just loved my dad. I remember Dawn and Pete, they took care of they didn't take care of my dad, but she brought the good eating habits to my dad. And it's like my dad wouldn't even eat the garbage with me anymore, because Pete would do it, my dad would do it. They would do yoga, with my dad. And it's like, come on, what's happening to you, Dad? But, it's kind of rubbing off on me now. And they were just ahead of their times. So it's hard to tell us not to grieve when one whom we have dearly loved is passed out of sight. But the fact remains that an excessive grief isn't good for any of us. And remember that if there is that link of love, we will certainly meet again. On this plane, we'll often see our friends go off to a distant shore. I mean, Pete and Dawn bailed on us for like 4 years. You went to Italy. It's like, where are you guys going? But they came back. We met again. We'll often see our friends go, but we will meet again. Richard Bach left this great line for us. He said, "Don't be dismayed at goodbyes. A farewell is necessary before we can meet again. And meeting again after moments, lifetimes, is certain for those that are friends." And so I've always enjoyed sharing this classic story before we get into talking about Pete and his eulogy. And Homer gave it to us in the Odyssey, or Odysseus, I guess, came first, kind of the same guy, just the Greeks had him first. And, he went off and explored the world and got lost, taken by storms or sirens or pirates. Who knows what the stories are. But he ended up on the enchanted isle where Calypso lived. And they were just wild times together. But when the time came and Odysseus was pushing off on his raft, Calypso came down to the beach and she said, "You can say goodbye to me, but you will never say goodbye to the memory of me." So as Pete rolls on, he's never going to say goodbye to the memory of you, Dawn, Sarah, grandchild. It's part of who he is. And so they asked me to share with you the obituary. Usually I'll just have people come up and share the stories, but Pete, it's really good. So he was born February 15th, 1946, and he passed on into the next life, rolled on into the next world, ascended there October 27th, less than a month ago of this year. He's a local kid, born in San Diego, not too many of those around. He was the oldest son of Morris Brick and Virginia Landon. Older brother John, sister Janet, cousin Jeannie, husband, who we all know, Dawn, father of Sarah, grandfather Shepherd. Pete was the oldest of the direct family, but truly young and loving at heart. In fact, it was that heart that betrayed him at the end, along with the complications from some cancer. But I got to tell you, I know about Pete, he wasn't going to go that long haul for the next year, winding down from cancer or whatever else was going on. He took charge of his life. He was tough. He said, "Okay, we're out of here. Let's roll." Pete spent his younger years sailing, surfing, I love this, and misbehaving. Yeah, I believe that for sure. He was still mischievous when we knew him, and exploring San Diego. He graduated from Point Loma High School in 1964 and the University of Pacific in 1968. But then he joined the Army. He volunteered. He spent time traveling with his family, sailing regattas. He tried out for the Olympics twice in the Dragon class with his father and brother, ski vacations, trips to Tijuana, several wonderful Franklin family anniversaries at the Iwahini Hotel in Yosemite, sailing trips around San Diego, to Baja, Acapulco, Tahiti, Hawaii. And when he entered the Army in 1968, or should I say when he volunteered for the Army, he went full bore. Officers Candidate School, Ranger, 10th Special Forces, becoming a Green Beret. Pete volunteered to go to Vietnam. He was part of the Military Assistance Command, Vietnam studies and observation groups in the Republic of Vietnam and South Vietnam. In 1970, he participated in Operation Tailwind. That was huge, guys. It was a covert intrusion that was classified for many years. Their mission was to draw the attention away from the CIA operation in Laos, and was being threatened by the Viet Cong forces. And as an added but unintended benefit of their mission, Operation Tailwind was able to interrupt the supply chain of the Viet Cong, funneling supplies from Cambodia to North Vietnam along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They also captured the records from the VC base camp headquarters, which provided the largest cache of intelligent information of the Vietnam War. The operation involved 136 men, including 16 American soldiers. They inserted helicopters 60 miles inside of the Laos border. After successfully completing their mission and despite being wounded, crashing in a helicopter, they were safely evacuated, and Captain Pete Landon received several medals and badges, including the Purple Heart, 2 Bronze Stars, 1 with the V, and the Honorable Discharge in 1972. After the Army, he joined a construction team at the University mechanical, and spent 10 years in San Diego as an estimator, another 10 years in San Francisco, project manager, working on many substantial building projects throughout California. And during this time, he raced in several Trans-Pac sailing races. That was before GPS. You know how crazy that was to sail off to Hawaii? How can you find that little dot, a month away? There had to be some intelligence there. Or But Pete was self-employed as a construction scheduler, and then both Don and Pete went to work for NAVFAC Southwest at the Navy Facilities Engineering Command. Their work took them from Camp Pendleton to Naples, Italy, where they spent nearly 4 years working and traveling throughout Europe and North Africa. Pete is survived by a few family members who I've shared, but a ton of friends look around and acquaintances, and just wants to make sure that each of you hug each other today in honoring the love that Pete is. And I could go on, but you got one of his buddies here that's going to tell you about his warrior spirit. So Richard, you want to come on up? And you got your computer here, so take us on this journey, all right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, good morning. My name is Richard Sindelar, and I've had the privilege of calling Pete my best friend for 48 years. I am honored that his family has asked me to share some of that journey, and a bit nervous about finding the right words to speak as a tribute to my friend. It's especially daunting because Peter loved words. He was a master wordsmith and loved a good pun or double entendre. And as most of you know, crossword puzzles were his favorite pastime. I first met Pete in the fall of 1973 at Bullies East, a favorite watering hole for UMEC employees here in San Diego. We were both working in the office for University Mechanical. Pete was fresh out of the military, and I was fresh out of the Midwest. Neither of us knew that we would become lifelong friends. From my perspective, Pete was larger than life. He was already a decorated war hero in Green Beret, and I had never met anyone like him. One of our early stories was the infamous field versus office football game. Tackle football in Balboa Park, no pads. Our office team won a lopsided victory, and two of the field team needed medical attention. Pete was the star of our team, and we forgot to tell the field team that Pete was playing league rugby at the time. He was tough. On another occasion, Pete asked for some help with a plumbing issue at his home in Point Loma. That was when I first met his daughter, Sarah. And it was the first of many remodel, repair, reimagine construction and demolition projects that Pete and I engaged in throughout the years. Pete was always engaging, interesting, and popular. He really connected with people. Some of the things I admired the most about him was his true kindness. Pete would give you the shirt off his back. I know. I still have a couple of them. Pete liked helping people and lifting them up. He liked fighting for the underdog. He was a Raider fan after all. He didn't believe in gossip or talking behind someone's back. Pete would laugh with you, not at you. He wasn't judgmental, no mean words, and he didn't really push his opinions on others. He'd share them, but he wouldn't kind of try to demand that you have the same opinions as him. One of Pete's friends described him as very matter-of-fact. This is what you get, like it or leave it, kind of guy. Very straightforward, but with an infectious laugh. I could definitely see that aspect in him, but there were more complex issues too. One paradox was that in the 70s, working at UMEC, Pete nurtured and helped develop a cutting-edge computer estimating software program. But then later in life, he deliberately distanced himself from electronic devices and apps. And another ironic paradox was that Pete would describe himself practically as a bully in grade school where he would get in fights, but there wasn't a mean bone in his body. That dichotomy was a part of who he was. He was a warrior, but a gentle warrior. The Vietnam War had welcomed Pete as the hippie lieutenant from California, but left him a bit raw, lost, and unhealed. On Pete's search for answers, he connected with the Vision Network in Las Vegas and Utah. And some representatives of that network are here today. Pete was a favorite of the founder of the Vision Network, Carol Reynolds, and she utilized him on the ropes team for high events and frequently designated him as the site safety manager. She once told the group that there are various kinds of leaders and that Pete was a great example of someone who had the presence and the character to lead from the middle. I found that to be profound and true. I also found the Vision Network to be healing for both of us. I've had the good fortune to do a lot of laughing and crying with Pete. The crying part was mostly at Vision, and I'm a believer that tears can help wash away the pain. Family was also an important part of who Peter was. Pete loved his family and was proud of his roots and his heritage. Virginia and Brick have gone before him along with some aunts and uncles and his remarkable grandparents who he would brag about. One side witnessed the San Francisco earthquake in 1906 from the Berkeley shore, and the other side rode horses in Mission Valley here in San Diego. Peter's survived by a handful of cousins, a beloved baby brother and baby sister, they're a little older now, and their spouses, and especially his two nephews, Jake and Joe. Pete loved the energy, enthusiasm, and promise of youth. Pete felt that his true legacy, though, was his daughter, Sarah. Pete always hoped that she got the good parts from him and not the bad parts. And his grandson, Shepard, was the best of the best. And then there is Peter's compass. His wife, Dawn, was the love of his life and kept him on course and was his partner through many adventures. I think they were destined to be together. Other stuff about Pete, the outdoorsy fun stuff. With Pete, we've been whitewater rafting on the American River in Northern California and in Costa Rica, sailing in the Pacific Ocean here in California and in Costa Rica, hiking, camping, snow skiing, body surfing, canoeing, golf, yoga, running 10Ks in the Beta Breakers frequently, biking here in California all over this part, including the Ensenada, Rosarita to Ensenada bike ride many times, and snorkeling in Italy. More fun stuff for Pete, cooking and music. He enjoyed both immensely. Additional fun stuff, Pete introduced me to 100 Proof Wild Turkey and Hornitos Tequila, his favorite, and of course a lot of wine. Some of the not fun stuff, loud noises, probably the only thing that Pete truly hated. One of Pete's favorite things to say when he was having fun and claiming innocence from some prank, "Oh, I'm much maligned." Or when he was on a new adventure and seeing a new place, his favorite phrase was absolutely marvelous. All in all, a life well lived. Who was Peter? Family, gentle warrior, friend. I had the good fortune to spend a few hours, or actually bonus days, with Peter in Arkansas just a couple of weeks before his final adventure in Houston. We didn't know the end was so near. Another of Pete's saying, when we'd go bike riding, running, hiking, or whatever, and I'd get tired and want to rest, Pete would always chide me and say, "There will be time to rest in the grave." I hope you rest peacefully, friend.
Well, the beloved, Richard alluded to, spoke about his Dawn. It was Dawn and Pete and Dawn and Pete. I mean, there were a couple that, when you spoke about one, as two of them came up together. Dawn blessed Seaside. She served on the board here. She worked within the office. Just been a deep part of this community. And Dawn, would you come and share about your sweetheart?
We all have a book of life, and the book of life has many chapters, and we don't know how many chapters there are. I call our chapters the book of adventures, because that is what hooked me with Pete. Many years ago, in the spring of 1984, when I had just met Pete, I asked him if he could do anything he wanted to do without regard to time or money, what would it be? Didn't take him long to say I'd buy a small boat and sail around the world. I contemplated that future for a while and decided to sign on. I met Pete in August 1983. He was my boss, but we never looked back. We started pretty quickly on in the first chapter of our life. That adventure, that first chapter of adventure is the one I call we moved to San Francisco. We went downtown and rode the Muni and did the San Francisco, North County things. Richard talked about some of those things we did. We worked for Richard in the Bay Area, sailing and skiing and golfing and all sorts of things up there. It was also in that time that we decided to launch that adventure, that dream he had of buying a small boat, and we did. We bought one in San Diego, Amadon Light. We bought it in San Diego, so our next adventure was take that boat north to San Francisco. And eventually, a few years later, in 1995, we cut the dock lines and launched our first big adventure, his first retirement. We spent a few years, three and a half years, sailing in Central America. When we finished in 1998, we came home to North County, made this our home for the next 20 years, really. The third chapter of his life is called Self-Employed in North County, right? We lived in Carlsbad a little bit, Cardiff and Oceanside. And our home that we still have is just a 5-minute walk from here. We found Seaside, became part of our community here. The fourth chapter we had, after working for a university as a subcontractor, really, right? Our fourth chapter was working for the government. We went to work for NAVFAC, working for the owner, and trust me, working for the owner is better than working for the subs. Pete had a big adventure in building on the team at Camp Pendleton, the Navy hospital there. Beautiful. You see it on 5 as you go north, that hospital. He loved that part. My big adventure from NAVFAC was, of course, our adventure that took us to Naples, Italy. Pete retired for the second time and accompanied me there. which began the 5th chapter of our adventure, really, and that was that we did all that we could do in that 3 or 4 months there, which included, we tried to organize our adventure because there's so much. How can you do it, right? So one weekend a month we'd get on a plane and go somewhere. One weekend a month we'd go by train somewhere. Another weekend a month we'd get in the car and drive locally. And then the last month we'd think about staying home and walking and taking the metro. There's a lot to see. And by this time we'd gotten pretty good at making adventures of almost every day, right? Towards the end of that adventure, in June 2019, Peter had some pain in his eye, and he asked for some pain medicine, which was really rare because my husband hardly ever felt any pain. And I allowed as though I didn't have any, but the next day we flew home, and the day following that we went to the hospital, and a series of events has led him then to losing his eye to melanoma, uvea melanoma, 2 months later. We returned to Italy and then moved home. In September 2019, we started our journey across the country and went back to work in Nafac Southwest. While we were in Philadelphia, where he had his eye removed, we did some genetic testing. And that genetic testing revealed that he had a 60% chance of metastasis. It's a very rare cancer, and there's no known treatment. So that put us on that path that said, we have a shortened timeline. We don't know what the timeline is. None of us do. We don't know how many chapters there are. But we recognize that it was probably not going to be as long as we might have otherwise wished for. And they told us 2 to 5 years. Well, that didn't stop the adventuring. What else for it? He felt great. He never had any pain up until the last week or so. And so we did what we did. We bought an RV. We said, we got to go to MD Anderson every 6 months for watchful waiting to watch for this, whatever this next chapter is bringing us. And so we bought an RV and we organized our trips. We would have a winter trip and go to Florida and Keys and go to Baja, and then we'd have a summer trip. We'd do the Northeast and then we'd do the Northwest. We didn't finish some of those adventures. Many of them we did get in. We missed Baja due to COVID. We had hoped many years before when we were sitting in Baja somewhere. We woke up one day in Bahia Concepcion and looked across the way, and the sun was shining on, what is that? RVs across the way, right? I said, you know what? When we get old, we should bring an RV and do Baja. We didn't quite make that, thank you, COVID. But maybe it's yet to come. We covered in that RV, in 16 months, we covered 20,000 miles. So we picked up the pace of our adventuring. And then I retired earlier this year. We had 7 months adventuring. But the seventh adventure we had, really, the 7th chapter we had, was that entanglement in the medical issues. And I know that there were some people that, didn't even know that we were doing that path. But we were, adventuring in spite of it. With melanoma, there's no good options, even back then. Nonetheless, we moved forward. We missed the first clinical trial that might have been possible by one day. So we went on and said, okay, well, we have a 40% chance of no metastasis, so we're going to go with that one. So we carried on. That brings us to earlier this year, in April, I think, when we were in MD Anderson, and they found some suspicious findings that they encouraged us to follow up locally. So we went back to Florida and followed up on some of those, and it turns out in June then they confirmed that the cancer had metastasized. So we got on a series of, okay, well, what does this mean? And they said, well, we have 1 to 2 years. So we were grappling with that most of the summer. Well, what does that mean? Well, you can have this clinical option or you can do nothing, and we're about the same, really. And we said, what's the timeline? And they gave us a 1 to 2 year timeline. They gave us a 1 to 2 year timeline as late as October this year. But they also said something else that I missed, and that's barring complications. And it's the complication that really took him out. It was his heart complicated with some blood clots and whatnot. Cancer, he still would have had another 1 or 2 years, but we got the complication. So we were actually sitting in the doctor's office at MD Anderson when he collapsed in a wave of nausea and pain. And within 10 minutes or 20, we were in the emergency room and they were administering medicine for precisely those things. And he, over course of time, became comfortable. But they still didn't know what that was causing. And it was a couple days later they sorted out that it was a complication that it was likely blood clots. It didn't go to his head, so he didn't have a stroke. It didn't go to his heart, so he didn't have a heart attack. Instead, it went to some organs, digestive organs specifically, that because of his heart condition were inoperable. Well, so what does that mean? And I got really good at asking this question, what's the timeline? And they said hours or days. Okay. So it was with heavy hearts we started the calls. Called Sarah, called his best friends. And the next day, some of his friends showed up. Richard Sendelar showed up. Richard Huff came as soon as he could get there on the plane. And so Peter was never alone. He was not in pain. And last week, sometimes he'd be doing some weird things. And I said, are you having a party in your head? He said, I think so. And he had good company. Richard Huff played him music, and Richard Huff regaled him with wordsmithing. And so it was, we moved into palliative care, and then started some Zoom calls with his family. And then a few days later, on Wednesday, well, let me start with Tuesday. Tuesday was one of those rally days, and you got to look for that. You can actually Google it. People that are dying have these things, and you think they're not sick, they're going to get better, let's go home, we can finish this thing. And then he died early on Wednesday morning. That was the 7th chapter. There's one more chapter, one that he's doing without me. And it's best represented by this reading. I am standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until, at length, she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then when someone at my side says, there, she is gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side, and she is just as able to bear the load of living freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, there, she is gone, there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout. Here she comes. Thank you.
We love you, Don. We're here for you. I know others here today have stories that they would like to share. What are they? Come on up. Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dean, and do we have it? Okay. So Don asked me to express a little bit of Pete's life that not everybody knows about. This is Challenge. This is up in Parowan, Utah. And this course, which has 40-foot telephone poles on it, we put people up there on those cables. And they walk across, they hope to get to the middle area right there, and usually they kiss that pole because they're so glad to get over there. And they're on a rope. There's a person down there that they're connected to, which is part of the ropes team. And there's a couple members right here. We're on the ropes team and so forth. And we had people go up there and do this. They came from all over the United States. Wow, in God's name would you get up there and get on a pole like that and walk across a little thin cable? Carol Reynolds, as he mentioned earlier, brought up a system called Vision and came up here and did this challenge. And for 3 days, you would cry, work your guts out, your inner stuff. And then on Sunday, you became ours. And we would put you up on this to work through all those fears, those unknowns of your life. You'd put them right there on that cable and hope to get across to the pole, work it out. Well, Carol comes up to me one time and says, we got this guy, this girl, you saw him here. Yeah? Well, this tall, skinny guy wants to come back and be on the team. So we talked it over, and here comes Pete, flying in. And the guy was so modest, I didn't know anything about his military past really until I saw that on the computer. He just was there, and I knew he had a military past, but not that much. And this kind of deal right here, when you're doing this, number one factor is safety. And this man came in and he brought us a safety program. He was there. And as a leader of the ropes team and stuff at times, when he walked in, I'm like, okay, this guy's got my back. I know I'm covered, because he was always right there. One day I was kind of in a tiff. I had to do something leadership-wise and stuff, and I'm sitting over the side by the truck thinking about this. And this guy walks up and puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, you can do this. You're great at what you do. And just take a breath. And every time I get in a tiz, that hand comes back to my shoulder, and I think about it, and he calms me down all the time. And a lot of people, even when they came to Challenge and stuff, they would see Pete and not really know what he was doing or where he was, why he was over here and stuff, but he was the guy in the background. He was the guy making sure everybody was secure. And it wouldn't take long, and people would notice that, and they'd go, oh, yeah, that guy's here. We're covered. And the whole team, when they knew Pete was there, we knew he was covered too. And that's the kind of stuff he did with us up there. And you just, if you've never been there, you never did anything like this, everybody's going, what in the world? What is this? But this guy came because he loved to be there. He loved to help. There's 30, 40 people sitting there at times, and he's going around, and if he's not even just physically touching them, he's still touching them, because his presence just calmed everybody down. And when you're doing this sort of stuff, you need that. And that's why we always enjoyed, we loved having Pete with us, and every day, he's my guy. Puts his hand on my shoulder. Appreciate it.
I'd like to open up the microphone to someone else who might want to share a story. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Peter's nephew. I'm Jake, or John Landon's son. Little story I have is mainly about Peter in Italy. And it was actually on, I believe, almost the same week that I went to, when I was studying abroad, I went to see both Peter and Dawn for Thanksgiving. I took the entire week with them and traveled about. Sometimes it was, I know for him, he hated those Fiats. He did. He was always so cramped in them, and I understood why, because I was about as tall as him, and they don't provide much space. But whenever I got to talk to him, or I got to see him, during that time. He definitely gave more, I want to say, reassurance. But he also wasn't afraid to just laugh, just talk, just sort of pat you on the back. When I was in Italy with him, he seemed more active, but I also found more of a taste for wine than anything else. But I think when he was there, he truly enjoyed it, regardless of time or retirement. But yeah, and actually, I wrote something a little bit, but I never really got the chance to share it with him. But see if I can get it on my phone. The original picture for this, thankfully Don put on or will be shown later, but it was a picture of him, me and Don taking a walk along a port in, I forget the place, but it was a beautiful little town, number of little boats along a little canal, and these are some words for him. To those who have passed us by, but ones that we will once again find again, in the end. May the journey he has started before us come back around to comfort those who are truly close to this wanderer. That's all. Thank you.
Is there someone else? Yes, come on.
I have a lot of good stories about Pete. I've called him Dad since I was a teenager, and Dawn has been the mother of my heart my whole life. So he was super mischievous. One day when I was at their house in Carlsbad, there was a thing of whiskey on top of the fridge, and he pulled it down and he got a shot glass out and set it on the table and filled it up. And he goes, "I want you to take that and just shoot it." And I was like, "Really? Like, I've never drank anything." He's like, "All at once, just all at once." And I was like, "Okay." Did it. It burned so bad. And he goes, "That'll teach you never to do that." In college, I remember calling him like 3 or 4 times a week. We talked for hours. He was so smart, and I just loved telling him all about the things I was learning and learning about his life. We used to love to play jokes on each other, and in college, one of my girlfriends, she's from South Africa, and at 8 o'clock at night, I was like, "We should go to California. We're going to go see Dawn and Pete." So we load up in the car and didn't even tell him we were coming, and I talked her into knocking on the door at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I said, "Just tell him, like, you think this is Tom Cruise's house and you'd like a picture with him." So she goes in her British South African accent and knocks on the door at 3 in the morning, and he comes out, and she was like, "I heard this is the house of Tom Cruise." And he looks up over and he goes, "Where is she? I know she's out there." Yeah, I also used to tease him. Actually, when he lived at the house just around the corner, I said, "I'm going to send the Mormon missionaries to your house." And he said, "Well, if you do, I'm going to open the door naked." When I was growing up, I came from a really religious family that didn't want you to swear. And so one day I was like, "Oh man, that's so bitching." And he was like, "What?" He said, "It's bitchin'. You got to drop that G." Pete was a master chef. I learned how to cook from him and Dawn. And they were there for the births of both of my babies. And they showed up like a week before my first daughter, Ella, was born. And Ella was actually born on Pete's birthday. So they share a sweet birthday together. But I remember him telling me, "The only thing I don't want you to do is scream. Like women do that. When the baby comes out, they scream. Could you not do that?" And I was like, "I'm going to make sure I double scream." And so he was upstairs, and while I was in delivery, he was working on, taking out my cabinets I wanted in the kitchen and doing all my remodel projects. I was like, well, if this is what it takes to get you to come down here to do my stuff, I'm going to have lots of babies. I got lots of projects. But after Ella was delivered, within just a couple minutes, he brought down this beautiful bowl of soup, and it was a curry with grapefruit and sweet potato in it, and it was delicious. And Pete would go into the fridge and he could just pick out any ingredients, and then he would make the most amazing meal. And Dawn was the same way. And I just remember that soup after hours of being in labor and how hard that was. And then he's just right there with this beautiful bowl of soup that rejuvenated me, and Dawn's there with a little cup with straw trying to give me water. And the next morning, they dressed my daughter Ella, and we have pictures, and Pete's just been an amazing part of my life. And I just wanted to share those little funny stories with you about him. And Dawn, I love you, and I'm grateful that you guys brought me into your life.
Hi, folks. I'm Laird Landon. I'm a cousin of Peter's, and I wanted to speak a little bit about the times we had when we were young, very young. But first, a couple of my thoughts on the value of the stories that we have to tell. I hope that when we start eating, we can continue to share with everyone. Love doesn't die, people do. The essence of a person never dies, the body does. That essence is what Peter shared with us, and each of us has Peter in him, in us, because of what he did for us and with us, and in some cases, to us. This is my understanding of what eternal life is. None of us could be who we are today unless we spent time with Peter. So how can he be gone? He isn't. There are 7 cousins. They've been referred to, some of them are here. In the big Landon family, there was me, then Pedro, which was his father's favorite name of him, Ginny, John, Anne, Brad, and Janet. Because Pete and I were closest in age, whenever there was a family get-together, and there were often get-togethers at Christmas and at Thanksgiving, Pete and I would grab any other cousins that we could find, and we'd take off to Adventureland. We would climb trees. We would tell each other stories. We would ponder the young women we knew whose breasts were getting larger. We didn't understand what that meant, but we were eager to find out. We also wondered what it would be like when we could get out of the house permanently and become the people that we wanted to be. So I wanted to be here to thank Peter for being in my life and to sit and listen to the stories that you have to tell of Peter. I learned so many already today. that really help, because as adults we were often living in different places. We get together occasionally, and it was bittersweet because we would just kind of get back into that place together, and then it would be over and we would be gone. So it really matters to me to hear as many of the stories that you can tell. You can tell me about the Peter that I love. Thank you.
He said that, and I was like, damn it, I'm terrified of public speaking. But I thought I'd be sorry. I always knew, just like Dean, that when Pete was on the site for Challenge, that everything was safe. And that I always knew if I had questions. I ran the ropes team for a couple of years, and I was so green. I was 20-something, and half the time didn't know what I was doing. But I knew when Pete was there that I didn't have to worry, because I could just turn around and go, hey, Pete, what am I doing here? Am I doing it right to keep people safe? One of the greatest events that we had out at Challenge was called The Wall. And it was this huge wall made of wood that the participants had to climb over without any ropes or help. They could only use each other. And one of Pete's favorite things to do was to be on top of the wall when the people came over. I knew that Pete was a vet, and I knew that he had found a lot of healing through Vision and Challenge. It was a very safe space for him. But what I also knew about Pete was that he created this huge space for people to heal. These people came and laid their deepest, darkest secrets that they couldn't tell anyone else, that they could share with Pete. And Pete would be there at the top of that wall, just creating this container for these people to come up, and you could just tell that it would open him up and heal him more as he helped those people heal. But it was so much more a part of him than just being there for safety. He just loved those people so much, and he loved being that space for them to heal. And that's the part of Pete that I remember. Thank you.
Sarah, Pete's daughter and grandson.
This is Shepherd.
Hi.
Okay, so most of you know that Dad could be a little bit naughty and had a great sense of humor. For all the Landon events, usually a poem gets read. Not particularly appropriate all the time, but definitely something that we do in the family, and I think my aunts and uncles will recognize this. It's called The Down and Out by C.L. Hay. So you've come to the tropics. Heard all you had to do was sit in the shade of the coconut glade while the dollars ran into you? They told you that in the bureau? Did you get the statistics straight? Well, hear what it did to another kid before you decide your fate. You don't go down with the hard shortfall, you just sort of shuffle along and loosen your load of the moral code till you can't tell right from wrong. I started out, to be honest, with everything on the square, but a man can't fool with the golden rule in a crowd that won't play fair. 'Twas a case of riding a dirty race or of being an also-ran. My only hope was to steal and dope the horse of another man. I pulled a deal at Guayaquil in an Inca silver mine. But before they found it was Celtic ground, I was safe in Argentine. I made short weight on the River Plate when running a freighter there. and I cracked a crib on a rich estate without even turning a hair. But the deal that will everlastingly bar my soul when it knocks on heaven's door was peddling booze to the Santa Cruz and Winchester 44s. Made unafraid by my kindly aid, the drunk, crazed brutes came down and left in a shivering, blazing mass in a flourishing border town. I was next in charge of a smuggler's barge off the coast of Yucatan, but she sank to hell off Cozumel one night in a hurricane. I got to the shore on a broken oar in the filthy, shrieking dark, with the other two of a good ship's crew converted into shark. From a limestone cliff, I flagged a skiff with a pair of salt-soaked jeans, and I worked my way, for I couldn't pay, on a fruiter to New Orleans. It's kind of a habit, the tropics. It gets you worse than rum. You'll get away and swear you'll stay, but it calls and back you come. 6 years went by, I was back on the job, running a war in Salvador with a black-faced barefoot mob. I was General Santiago Hicks at the head of a grand revolt, and my only friend from start to end was a punishing army colt. I might have been a president, a prosperous man of means, but a gunboat came and blocked my game with 110 Marines. So I awoke from my dream, dead broke, drifted from bad to worse, sank as low as a man can go who walks with an empty purse. But stars, they say, appear by day when you're down in a deep black pit. My lucky star found me that way when I was about to quit. On a fiery hot, flea-ridden cot, I was down with the yellow jack, alone in the bush and all but dead when she found me and nursed me back. She came like the miracle man of old and opened my poor blind eyes, and upon me shone a bright new dawn as I turned my face to the skies. There was pride and grace in her young brown face, for hers was the blood of kings. In her eyes shone the glory of empires gone and the secret of old world things. We were spliced in a Yankee meeting house on the land of your Uncle Sam, and I drew from my pay from the USA, for I worked at the Gatun Dam. Then the devil sent his right-hand man, I might have expected he would, and he took her life with a long, thin knife, because she was straight and good. Within me died hope, honor, and pride, all but a primitive will, to hunt him down on his blood-red trail, find him and kill and kill. Through longwood swamps and chicle camps, I hunted him many a moon, and I found my man in a long pit pen by the side of a blue lagoon. The chase was o'er at the farthest shore. It ended my 2 years' quest, and I left him there with a vacant stare and a John Crow on his chest. You see these punctures on my arm? Do you know what they mean? Those marks were left by the fingers deft of my trained nurse, Miss Morphine. Of course you'll say, that's worse than drink. It's possible too, you're right. At least it drives away the things that come and peer in the night. There's a homestead down in an old Maine town with lilacs round the gate, and the northerners whisper, it might have been, but the truth has come too late. They say they'll give me 1 more month to live. A month or year is the same. I haven't the heart to play my part to the end of a losing game. For whenever you play, whatever the way, for the stakes that are large or small, the claws of the tropics will gather your pile, and the dealer gets it all.
I can just imagine sitting around the Landon clan listening to those poems all night. And oh, wow. Anyway, opportunity for us to take a look at the Landon clan over the years. We've got a slide presentation right here.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret. Trained to live off nature's land, trained in combat hand to hand, men who fight by night and day, courage take from the Green Beret, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret. Back at home, a young wife waits. Her Green Beret has met his fate. He has died for those oppressed, leaving her this last request. Put silver wings on my son's chest. Make him one of America's best. He'll be a man they'll test one day. Have him win the Green Beret.
Well, the first days are the hardest days, don't you worry anymore. 'Cause when life looks like easy street, there is danger at your door. Think this through with me. Let me know your mind. Whoa, what I want to know is, are you kind? It's a buck dancer's choice, my friends. Better take my advice. You know all the rules by now, and the fire from the ice. Will you come with me? Won't you come with me? Whoa, what I want to know. Will you come with me? Goddamn, will I declare, have you seen the light? Their walls are built of cannonballs. Their motto is don't tread on me. Come here, Uncle John's bed, playing to the tide. Come with me or go alone. He's come to take his children home. The same story the crow told me, it's the only one you know. Like the morning sun you come, and like the wind you go. Ain't no time to hate, barely time to wait. Whoa, what I want to know, where does the time go? In a silver mine, and I call it Beggar's Tomb. I got me a violin, and I beg you call the tune. Anybody's choice, I can hear your voice. Whoa, what I want to know, how does the song go? band by the riverside. Got some things to talk about here beside the rising tide. Come hear Uncle John's band playing to the tide. Come on along or go alone. He's come to take his children home. Side. Got some things to talk about here beside the rising tide. Come hear Uncle John's band playing to the tide. Come on along and go alone. He's come to take his children home.
As the son of a sailor, I went out on the sea for adventure, expanding the view of the captain and crew like a man just released from indenture. As a dreamer of dreams and a traveling man, I have chalked up many a mile, read dozens of books about heroes and crooks, and I learned much both of their style. Son of a son, son of a son, son of a son of a sailor, son of a gun, load the last ton, one step ahead of the jailer. Now way in the near future, southeast of disorder, you can shake the hand of the mango man as he greets you at the border. And the lady she hails from Trinidad, island of the spices, salt for your meat and cinnamon sweet, and the rum is for all your good vices. Haul the sheet in as we ride on the wind that our forefathers harnessed before us. Hear the bells ring as the tide rigging sings. It's the son of a gun of a chorus. Where it all ends, I can't fathom, my friends. If I knew, I might toss out my anchor. So I cruise along, always searching for songs. Not a lawyer, a thief, or a banker, but a son of a son, son of a son, son of a son of a sailor, son of a gun, load the last ton, one step ahead of the jailer. I'm just a son of a son, son of a son, son of a son of a sailor. The seas in my veins, my tradition remains. I'm just glad I don't live in a trailer. recall the whole year. All of the faces and all of the places, wondering where they all disappeared. I didn't ponder the question too long. I was hungry and went out for a bite. Ran into a chum with a bottle of rum, and we wound up drinking all night. It's those changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes, nothing remains quite the same. All of our running and all of our cunning, if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. Reading departure signs in some big airport reminds me of the places I've been. Visions of good times that brought so much pleasure makes me want to go back again. If it suddenly ended tomorrow, I could somehow adjust to the fall. Good times and riches and son of a bitches, I've seen more than I can recall. These changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes, nothing remains quite the same. Through all of the islands and all of the highlands, if we couldn't laugh, we would all go insane. I think about Paris when I'm high on red wine. I wish I could jump on a plane. So many nights I just dream of the ocean. God, I wish I was sailing again. Oh, yesterdays are over my shoulder, so I can't look back for too long. There's just too much to see waiting in front of me, and I know that I just can't go wrong. With these changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes, nothing remains quite the same. With all of my running and all of my cunning, if I couldn't laugh, I just would go insane. We couldn't laugh, we just would go insane. We weren't all crazy, we would go insane.
Fare you well, my honey. Fare you well, my only true one. All the birds that were singing are flown, except you alone. Going to leave this broke down palace on my hands and my knees. I will roll, roll, roll. Make myself a bed by the waterside. In my time, I will roll, roll, roll. In a bed by the waterside, I will lay my head. Listen to the river sing sweet songs to rock my soul. River, going to take me, sing me sweet and sleepy. Sing me sweet and sleepy all the way back home. It's a far gone lullaby I sung many years ago. Mama, mama, many worlds I've gone since I first left home. Going home by the waterside, I will rest my bones. Listen to the river sing sweet songs to rock my soul. Gone to cleanse a weeping willow on the banks, green it will grow, grow. Sing a lullaby beside the water.
Pete, we love you. We love you. My goodness. There's a message he leaves us. It's one that shows us the value of doing what our heart desires now. To do good now, to take that trip now, to grab your loved one, buy a RV and go across the country. You know, it's just the value of doing the good and showing our love now. For our time in this world is limited, and which to show our love, to do our good. We may not have tomorrow. I mean, all that we are assured of is today, the here and now. So if there are those in our life who need our love, let us love them today. If those in our life need some forgiveness, let us forgive them today. If there are those who need our trust, let's be willing to open our heart. Let's trust the Spirit today. One of the beautiful promises can be found in Isaiah, chapter 25, verse 8, where it says, "He will swallow up our death in victory, and the Lord will wipe away our tears from our faces." That promise is being wonderfully fulfilled today. It's human to grieve over the loss of a dear one. We love them. But the true realization of the immortality and the continuity of the individual life that is forever expanding will rob our grief of a hopelessness. So let us recognize that Pete is in God's keeping and that he is safe. And let us know that just as a child is met here and greeted and guided into this life existence, Pete has been met and is guided into that next existence. For the actual truth is, there is no death. When a person seems to have ascended here or moved on, all that has happened is that they have left behind their physical body. And in Pete's case, he used it up, starting with that mischievous little kid that ran out into the trees in San Diego in those early days, to these ending years when he took off in the motorhome and ran off across country. He lived life to the fullest. And the legacy he leaves us is to live life fullest. And so the eyes have not seen nor the ears heard, and neither can the heart of anyone conceive of the good that God has in store for us. And if we could know life as Pete knows it now, if we could look out upon the vistas and see it as Pete sees it now, we wouldn't call him back. And what he knows doesn't seem strange anymore. And he knows it through experience. And so, friends, we grant a very special place in our philosophy of sitting in the stillness for a moment. I know Pete did too. He knew and was comfortable in the stillness and the quiet. And so let us take a moment together here in this stillness and allow that Spirit to come in and touch us and wrap its arms around the hearts of those that could use a little extra of that support at this time, to bring us a faith that reassures us that all is well for Pete and us. I'll bring us back with prayer. So let's take a minute here. We come from God, and to God we shall return. He has made us all immortal, and all will live somewhere. And our dear friend, brother, husband, dad, grandfather, has moved on, but just a short time ago, but he already reunites with his compadres, with his buddies, with his family, with the ancestors. So those cherishing memories that are forever sacred, sustained by a faith that is stronger than death, comforted by the belief of life that is eternal. We know that Pete moves on with the ease and the grace and the guidance of the light of God. And I know right now that he already unites with those that he loves, that he is consciously alive, awake, and aware. I rejoice that I know these things. May the spirit of that eternal, omnipresent, loving Father, Mother, God continue to sustain and guide Pete forward on his forward journey. And may that Spirit's great love comfort and sustain those dear ones of us who have gathered to wish him Godspeed. And I thank God that we stand here as a witness to this deep reality. And may thy understanding fill us with the full realization of peace. For as we know, there is a peace that passes understanding that brings us comfort at this time. So our hearts filled with the love and the memories of Pete Landon, we go forth from here knowing all is well, for all is, and so it is. Amen. And may that Spirit of God in me honor and salute that Spirit of God in you. And together, let us honor that dear, wonderful, magnificent Spirit that we have known as Pete Landon. And we go forth in peace. So it is. I'll tell you what, let's give Pete one last standing ovation. And then we'll join together and celebrate with food. Pete, a life well lived. We love you.
For an